And I asked Cara about framing the perfect travel pic.
Woo!
This week, special guest Cara Lohman asks me about creating casual chaos. This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. Chaotic enough for you?
Woo!
I don't really know how to start this without Joey, so hi, this is Jess. And with me, I also have special guest and chronic thesaurus user, Cara Lohman. Welcome to the show, Cara.
Thanks for having me, Jess.
Tell me, what is the deal?
What is the deal?
Because there is something about this, right?
Yeah, chronic thesaurus user.
Yeah, what's this?
I use I can't even say it, but I use the
thesaurus
every day. And I am Googling synonyms every day because I use the word good too much. And I feel like it's the secret. We don't want to admit that we don't know lots of adjectives. And it's okay. It's okay to thesaurus.
You're right.
So I'm here, PSA, to say it's okay to look up synonyms. It's human nature.
Oh, so empowering. Such a strong start to our conversation together. Is there a word that you recently learned some kind of incredible synonym to?
Oh, gosh. You're really putting me on the spot here.
It's okay if it takes a really long time. You should use the thesaurus right now.
Quick! Well, I can tell you one...
Look it up!
I can tell you one word I want to look up. And I don't even know if I'm going to say it correctly. So I'm being really open.
Yeah, let's go for it. This is great. You're doing so great.
Simulacra?
Simulacra?
Simulacra.
Like multiple simulacrums?
Yes. I saw that somewhere. Oh, I saw it in a presentation. And I was like, this is a beautiful, impressive word. And I have no idea where you're supposed to enunciate, how you're supposed to end the word. And so that one's been knocking around in the noggin for a while, and I've been meaning to look it up. But, why Google it when you can just ask Jess?
See, you can't put me on the spot like that. But I can tell you it reminds me of another word that I don't have a replacement for, but I'm constantly grasping for, which is the word artifact, but in the sense of like a little bliplet that's on the screen or like a little, it's like a little strange thing on a painting. You're like, what is that strange artifact in the corner? It's like this alien object that for some reason is interrupting the thing. And I feel like trying to find the synonyms for those complicated sort of tactile words are really fun.
Tactile, that's a good one. I find that artifact is one of those words that it's a bit catch-all. Like, for example, we talk about cultural artifacts when it's just an example. But there's something so much more impressive about calling it an artifact. And I'm sure anthropologists roll their eyes when they hear us use it, but it's a pretty word. I'm a fan of it.
I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. In very specific use cases. But okay, we digress. Cara, you have brought to us today a very interesting topic, and I would love to pass it on to you because we have no housekeeping. So can you kick us off?
Absolutely.
What are we talking about?
So let me start with a quick story. A couple weeks ago, I saw this wonderful movie called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And I won't give away any spoilers. All I will say is that it is one of those movies that stays with you. And I truly have not stopped thinking or talking about it to anyone who will listen since I saw it. And
is it like one of those that's like trying hard to be thoughtful? I haven't seen it myself. Or is it the kind of thing that just makes you think because it has an interesting premise?
Given that I know why the director set out to make that movie, they very much are trying to make the audience think and consider things. But it doesn't feel... The movie itself is sensory overload, but the deeper themes I don't feel like they're hitting you over the head with a hammer. It's just a beautifully woven together story that's really funny, very visually stimulating.
Yeah.
But at the end, you walk away just feeling really fulfilled, I guess, was my experience.
Wow. High praise.
High praise. High praise. This is not an ad for Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is just...
But kind of, you're an ambassador.
Am I an ambassador?
By accident.
That should have been my title for this podcast. But essentially, it's a movie in which there are vast, infinite universes. It's a multiverse movie. It's many things, but it is...
So in vogue.
It is so in vogue. It's just so of the moment. And the main character, Evelyn, in the movie is taught to verse jump, which is essentially a trick that allows her to jump to a different universe. And to give herself this verse jump, or the kick, Evelyn must perform a really weird task, something that makes truly no sense for that given moment. That then kicks her out of her current reality and puts her in a new one. So this idea of verse jumping really got me thinking about my own life, and I tend to crave order. That's not to say I'm not spontaneous, but I probably go through dozens upon dozens of normal routine moments. I'm operating within certain societal expectations, and it can be something that's really mundane. For example, from the moment I get up, I brush my teeth, I take my pajamas off, I put on real clothes, and then I wash my face. That's the order every morning. I don't even think about it. Mm-hmm. When I get on the train, I wait for people to come off before I get on. I get on at roughly the same time every day. So there are these moments of order throughout our days, and sometimes they're happening individually or sometimes they're socially. For example, I know to walk on the right side of the street, otherwise someone walking towards me might hit me, and so forth. So it had me thinking a lot about structure and how it's a way to deal with the unpredictability of our lives. But then I was thinking, well, what happens if I choose chaos, or I choose to do something so absurd like verse jumping? What would happen? And it doesn't have to be chaos like Michael Bay explosion or truly unhinged, but what if I created moments of casual chaos in my very order-driven life? What might happen? So my question for Critical Nonsense is, why choose casual chaos?
Casual chaos. It almost sounds like disrupting something that's not necessarily serving you, or at the very least where there's kind of low risk. Like, how are you seeing this casual component?
I think that's a really good question, because in order to talk about chaos and casual chaos, we also have to talk about what order and structure is and the ways in which those show up in our life. So my definition of casual chaos is something that is just outside of the ordinary. One example that I've read about, but have not done yet myself for fear of social, anxiety, is you get into an elevator. Everyone faces the front, right? What happens if you turn around and face everyone in the middle? It's kind of awkward, but I think this is a really great example of casual chaos, because as soon as you flip around, kind of forces you to confront the people who are right behind you, if they're strangers or if they're somebody that you know. It's an opportunity to say hi, to engage, or just stand there and kind of be creepy.
In
Not
tight
rude.
Quarters, that is very chaotic behavior.
It is chaotic.
Turning around, especially if they're at the same height, you're just staring them down directly in the elevator.
It is. Yeah. It is chaotic. So my definition of casual chaos is a momentarily absurd activity that you can do that is not malicious, but is just something sort of that deviates from typical behavior. And I'm really curious about what happens if you do something like that. Can there be positive outcomes attached to it? So I know this sounds very heady and very theoretical, but thinking back to Everything Everywhere All at Once, one of the ways in which they verse jump through absurd moments is one of the characters, this is really absurd, but he unrolled a tube of chapstick and ate it. That's obviously insane. But
yeah,
it was something that everyone around him was not expecting and made them laugh and made them very surprised. So how can we do things in our everyday that make someone laugh or make ourselves laugh or bring an element of surprise in a place that doesn't often warrant a lot of surprise, is how I think about it.
Yeah, it also brings up, I think, two things for me. One, which is, who are you affecting with a certain chaotic behavior? Like, if you eat a roll of chapstick alone in the woods, like, is anyone there to hear it? You know what I mean? And the second thing is, like, how long lasting is the thing before it's more just like a choice as opposed to sort of an ephemeral chaos infusion. Like, if tomorrow I decided to buy chickens, that may be a chaotic behavior because maybe to those who know me, it might not be that out of the ordinary because I'm fascinated by chickens. But, that's a long-lasting change, and maybe in the moment it would be a chaotic shift, but over time that just becomes like, I'm a chicken owner now, So I do feel like there has to be an element, like I'm trying to figure out what are the other components that really that would make something chaotic, so then we can think about then what it's going to do. Because I don't think you can assess something like buying chickens necessarily as a chaotic decision.
I love this. I love this scenario. I think the grocery store is the perfect time to experiment. And I think what we're talking about is experimentation. And there's two things in your scenario that you talked about. And one is the moment of chaos and then the lasting effect that would come after. You're a chicken lover. You're eating chicken every day. You're having chicken pot pie. You're having chicken dumplings. Insert other chicken-themed meals.
Yeah.
But
so many.
But going back to the grocery store moment, in that moment, are you expecting to love chicken for months afterwards? And that's where I think it's really interesting. Is this moment of experimentation going to be a means to an end? Or am I going to do it without considering what might happen after? So I think this is a really interesting example. And I think about when I go to Trader Joe's or any grocery store for that matter. What if I just closed my eyes, or metaphorically closed my eyes?
What if you went grocery shopping with your eyes closed?
With my eyes closed. And just grabbed.
And you just felt around.
Just
see what happened.
Good. What if you chose your groceries based on texture instead of flavor? That's kind of chaotic because you might...
Or Chinese.
Yeah. I think
Talk to my abu.
I think that's really interesting. What if you went in and instead of, okay, I need a protein, I need dairy, I need something sweet. What if you went in and said, I'm only going to pick things that are yellow?
Yeah.
To me, that is
you go.
That chaotic behavior. It's creative, but it's also chaotic in a way.
Okay, I'm really glad that we went to this grocery store place because I admit I had been imagining purchasing live chickens and just becoming sort of a livestock owner. But actually, the grocery store is really interesting too because that sort of yellow food purchasing example is only chaotic if you don't normally do that and after you don't do it again. Otherwise, you just become a person who likes bananas.
Exactly.
A lot. Right? And that's where I wonder too, like, one of the side effects of introducing something seemingly chaotic is just like habit formation. Like, I try a new thing and I like it, so then I just switch my thing. Now I do this. I guess I'm wondering, like, the other types of positive effects, you know, what does it look like when suddenly you're not just breaking up a pattern, but you are releasing control to outside forces, for example. Like, there's this game I was playing with friends the other day. It's a Polish rendition of pickup sticks called Bierki.
Oh.
But like which is not pertinent to the story, because more importantly is that the game of pick up sticks involves you just like throwing stuff into the air and you like see where the things fall and then you play based on wherever the sticks fell. Like, is there a way that you could shake things up if basically creating casual chaos is synonymous with change for our thesaurus user here? Like, what happens if you're just like, I don't know, let fate decide. Trust your heart. Tarzan.
I love this. If I could bring that to your grocery store example. Also, I made an assumption that you would acquire these chickens and then eat them. That was an unfair assumption because in your fantasy of chaos, you become a farmer.
That's what I mean.
And that was unfair of me to assume that you'd eat the chickens. Who am I to judge what Jess does with her chickens? That's a podcast for a different day where we just talk about Jess's envisions for her farm. But
and a pig. Okay.
And a pig. Can't forget the pig. But yeah. I think that's really interesting because this idea of relinquishing control is all wrapped up in this scenario. What if you were in a grocery store and you asked another customer, what should I buy today? What is my brief for grocery store shopping?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I witnessed, can I just side story tell you about, I was out with my family to a hole-in-the-wall restaurant in Chinatown, and across from us was a table of two tourists. And in the bustle of this restaurant, the waitress was so busy, harried, chucking plates on the table because she's the only one running the whole place. And the gentleman pauses her and with theatrics beyond compare asks a question that might be normal in other contexts, but is basically like, if you could choose anything on the menu, what do you think that we should have? And this woman was like, what? I don't know. Like, anything. Just pick something. And she refused. Like, all this guy wanted was to, like, allow someone perhaps with more perspective on this menu to be able to decide for him. And she was like, I can't right now. I do not have time for you. But, imagine someone willing to be able to take on that control on your behalf.
I almost felt the secondhand awkwardness just in hearing you, the cringe, just in hearing you describe this scenario. And I've been there. I have been on both sides of that awkward interaction, both as the asker who's so eager to give someone else a platform, and as the recipient who is so off guard and so busy. And I just don't have time for you to ask me these questions. So yeah, empathy is firing off in all directions. But
okay, but to your original point.
To my original point, if you walk into a grocery store, there's a 50-50 chance, probably more like 70-30 chance that the person is not going to want to engage and tell you what groceries to buy. And
they're worried about their own groceries.
They're worried about their own groceries. And of course, these are all just thought experiments. In no way am I telling listeners to go out and impose chaos on people who don't want it. But
it's true.
But let's say you get the person who is really down to give you your brief for grocery shopping. what makes me excited about this random moment is that they'll never forget it. They'll go home and tell their spouse, you know what happened to me at Trader Joe's? This guy asked me, or this gal asked me what groceries to buy. And we swapped lists. She gave me her list, I gave her my list, and now we have each other's groceries. And I fantasize about giving a stranger like a random memory like that. And in that way, the payoff of the chaos isn't some new long-formed habit for myself. It's this exchange of weird memories with a stranger that gets me excited. So I'll give you an example, and then I would love to know if you have any memories or experiences related to chaos, but I'll share one of mine. When I was living in Los Angeles, I had a weekly radio show on a radio station called KXLU. It's an FM radio station. It broadcasts out of my former college, Loyola Marymount University. Shout out to independent radio. And I had, for the first year, a really terrible time slot, 2 to 6 a.m. It was really grueling.
Tough.
Brutal. Monday mornings, 2 to 6 a.m. And
yikes.
The people that listen to the radio between 2 to 6 a.m. are a really special breed. I never met them, these listeners, but I know they were out there. Or at least I hope they were. But
yeah, of course.
My vision for the show was, I'm going to play some music that you might expect to hear at 5 in the morning. Maybe it's something soft, maybe it's guitar, maybe it's got a really nice drum beat, nothing crazy. But every 30 minutes, I would sneak one really random song in. For example, I remember playing some songs by the composer Ennio Morricone. He's the famous composer for lots of like horror films and spaghetti westerns. I would just sneak one song in there just because maybe there's one listener out there who is a big fan and he wasn't expecting to hear it on his morning commute. For everyone else,
And yet,
for everyone else, that's highly chaotic to hear a Halloween scary horror song on your morning commute Monday. But to me, the idea that it could maybe make one person happy amidst all of that was really fulfilling. So that's a highly specific example of strategically deployed chaos. Maybe it's not even really chaos, but it's a memory that comes to mind for me. And I'd love to know.
Maybe not chaos for you, but maybe for those listeners, those 4 a.m. listeners.
Exactly.
Who are not suspecting, none the wiser. And then bam!
And it really brings to mind questions that you had asked at the outset, which is chaos self-directed? Is it social? Who benefits? Me or the other person? And in a way, being on the radio show was a way for me to play with some of those questions via sound.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of like your own personal agency in creating some kind of chaos is interesting. I think my initial interpretation when you had shared this topic first was more around like how almost those two sides of chaos of like what is chaos from one vantage point may not look like it to another. And I had a long time ago seen an art exhibition featuring, I'm going to butcher his name, apologies, Benoit Mandelbrot and his work in fractals, which is sort of a subset of chaos theory and like how fractals are basically like something super complex looking that can be created from super simple rules, or like something that looks rough or chaotic or messy, like a cloud, has some degree of order. It's just that you don't know what it is. And there's like something that has led it to be this way, or even sort of like patterns in bee movements that look maybe inexplicable to someone who doesn't get it. But if a bunch of bees are following a simple rule from the bee ahead of them who was like, dudes, gotta go find the flower over here, then it makes a lot of sense. And it reminds me even of what you were sharing in your radio story about you had a plan in mind. Like every few songs you're going to insert this thing. But let's say someone just happens to be tuning into your radio show this one day. It creates a moment of serendipity and unexpected chaos for them. And that is kind of curious to me. I don't know. I don't know what it means or how that – it might not do anything is sort of the thing. Like just because there either is this – imbalance of information, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be an outcome. And I think if your original question is related to how can this sort of create something, I don't think you can guarantee it. I think that's kind of the point of the process of like, hey, it might. You're like taking a shot, right?
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think in a lot of ways the question is unanswerable because how you might interpret chaos is so different from one person to the other. And there is the chaos theory, which is so interesting. And I'm so glad you brought it up. And I love the bee analogy. And I think it has a lot to do with perspective, like you mentioned. To someone who is not a bee, it looks completely insane. And from the vantage point of a bee or someone who studies bees, I'll have to look up what the name of the profession is that studies bees. But if you're that person, you understand what's going on and you see the organization through the chaos. And so I think that's where this concept of multiverse also comes in because there's different realities that are happening simultaneously, interpreting events differently. And it's so fascinating to see multiverse and this idea of chaos and organization kind of rise up in pop culture. You were so right. Multiverses are having a moment. And it's really interesting to think about the examples of chaos and chaos theory in nature and art. And you mentioned fractals. And it's so interesting how many different ways it can be interpreted. And I think that's the fun of thinking about a topic like this, is that there's no right answer. Nothing is as linear as we'd like it to be. I think humans have a tendency to want to explain things and, again, find the order. But this is a topic where there inherently isn't really an explanation all the time, and sometimes there is.
Yeah, for sure. Usually around this portion of the show, I will signal to Joey that it's time to wrap this segment, but then he'll, with that notice, add one last point. Because he is not here, Cara, what are your final words about this idea of creating casual chaos?
The final thing I want to say about this idea of creating casual chaos is no matter why you do it or how, whether it's in a social place or not, as long as you're choosing to do it with an open mind and with empathy in mind, to me is all that matters. As long as there's good intent and the spirit of experimentation, that's all that really matters.
Awesome. Okay. Then the next step is me doing a wrap-up corner. And in this wrap-up corner, perhaps what I will choose to do is describe an example of chaos because you asked that also may represent the types of things that you just said about like creating casual chaos with caution, which is that yesterday I happened upon in my travels from where I am recording this episode right now, happened upon a minuscule laundry room overflowing with laundry, just on the floor, atop the machine, in every cabinet. If you open a door, there's laundry in it. And you know it's laundry because it's sort of crumpled up as if it came out of the dryer and you just shoved it straight in there. Just this moment itself was a chaotic experience for me to open up this door to a laundry room. And this is what I saw. But I needed to do my laundry. And so I took out the clothes that were in the dryer. And there was a door to a cabinet that if you angled it about 45 degrees. It created just the right distance that this giant ball of laundry could perch atop the door to the cabinet and lean on its side, balancing against the laundry machine. And thus is how I left the laundry in this machine to await the next unsuspecting guest. And I think that it's a perfect allegory to some of the lessons that we talked about, which is, who are you affecting? Well, the person who created the original laundry chaos. It's just me and this individual. And how long-lasting are these changes? Just this one moment. It didn't really change much between the laundry inside of the dryer and then the laundry now perched atop the cabinet. It was stable. Nothing was going to tip over, but it was insane. And I really hope that, it just inspired this person whenever they do come across it. So I don't know if this is doing justice to what you intended with this, Cara, but I did find it really interesting.
I think that's amazing. I think you just set someone up for the perfect Rube Goldberg machine of chaos.
I'm terrible is what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is that you just set someone up for just the most perfect comedic timing ever and relatively harmless. Because you needed to get your laundry done. Chances are they're going to do the same thing for the next person and just up the stakes.
Totally. It wasn't even it was certainly not malicious too, which was, I think, another criterion that you'd added, right? Like, wasn't intended to fall over, get messy. It was just that's a weird place to put laundry. But one must innovate in times of desperation. Okay, thank you for bringing us this topic. This was really fun.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, a lightning round topic to round us out. Cara, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Inspired by my recent travels, I'm, as I mentioned, recording this episode from said travels. I'm currently at our Amsterdam office. It's really nice here. And on these travels, I am faced yet again after a very long hiatus of traveling, as I imagine that most people might have experienced given the last couple of years. This insane phenomenon of having to ask someone to take a picture of you when you are trying to get a photo of you and these other people. And the choices that are made by this individual in taking your photo are fascinating to me. First off, of course you have to follow the best practice of trying to ask someone who seems to be holding a nice camera and then not allowing someone else in their party to grab the phone instead. Give it to the person who has the camera because they're probably going to be the best shot that you'll get at getting a photo that's decent, or at least a steady hand. But beyond that, I found that there are these two very distinct paths that the photo taker seems to take when taking a picture of you. Let's say you're at some sort of photo point or a vista, and you'll link arms with whomever, and you'll start smiling, and then you'll get the phone back, and there are two types of photos you might see. You might see you and your persons or whomever sort of center most of your body in view, and you are clearly the main focus of the image. But you will also find a version of this photo where you and your people are to the side and the background is somehow the main piece of what is in view. And I just need to know, what is the standard expectation of how someone should be framing up a travel photo? And a corollary is, what should then be the thing you ask of the photographer if you had one request? Should it be the inverse? I think I just what is the standard, and then what should you be correcting to if you would prefer the alternative?
Oh man, there is just so much to dissect here. And
Okay, great.
First, let me preface this all by saying, so relatable. Again, have been the one in front of the camera, have been the one to take the photo. So I love this. This is great.
Okay, great.
I also want to say that I think we've all been taught this rule of thirds listeners can't see this, but I just did air quotes.
You're using air quotes.
This rule of thirds when it comes to photography, that your subject should not be head on. Your subject should be in one of the thirds. And I think this is still a photography principle. I'm sure it is. But for some reason, when it comes to amateur photography and you don't have a chance to set up lighting, you don't have a chance to adjust the aperture on this iPhone, it just never ends up looking right. So I'm just going to say my philosophy is that having the subjects in the corner to capture the rest of the background is not great. I think aesthetically it looks awkward. You're going to take tons of pictures of the sunset or whatever the vista is in this scenario. I'm assuming in Amsterdam, you're in the city, there's architectural beauty surrounding you. You're going to take photos of those. What you want is a photo of the people you're with. And the background is in the background. That's all I have to say about the matter.
This to me, like, and this is the thing, is like, am I crazy? Like, I don't want to be obnoxious. I know I'm the one asking a favor of someone who needs not do anything for me. So I don't want to be presumptuous. But I have to say, if I am at said vista, I can take a picture of the vista on my own. That's a separate picture. If I'm requesting assistance and someone offers to assist, the thing that I am desiring is a picture of the people, and it's sort of like that is very obviously trying to be the center frame. I think, unless you're doing one of those Tower of Pisa moments where it's like you interacting with the background. But if there's no interaction happening with the background, I don't really understand why we need to be sort of next to one another. It is very okay in my mind, so long as you have a wide enough shot to just have the people center frame.
I love the idea of asking a stranger to take photographs of you and your friends doing just the goofiest poses, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Imagine getting asked to take photos of strangers and then they start setting up in the pyramid, like the four friends get on their hands and knees, and then the three, specific. Like imagine being asked to shoot this spectacle. I think that's hilarious and also kind of mean. And I'm such a pushover. I wouldn't say no. I would let them do it for however long it took.
You're right. It's happening. Well, I guess we're doing this. You know, it also reminds me of something. I had this very stupid idea and then immediately forgot about it during the journey, which is a bummer because I really loved the idea. But it was that, what if the travel poses of in where we were traveling, there were castles present, and I was like, wouldn't it be so funny if there was some way to create a pose that was kind of like that end game in Mario, where like Mario clings to the flagpole right next to the castle and sort of like slides down as a way of like you like beat the level. And I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be so funny to do like a weird crouching jump next to all these castles? Which is it's just like speaking of chaotic concepts, like imagine asking some stranger to just, okay, can you just do that one more time while you're doing like a weird you're like jumping
hold on,
pose.
Let me grease up my hands with this stick of butter real quick so I can really get the speed right. I'll do you one better. You ask a stranger to follow you into an alleyway. You find an open plumbing pipe, and then you start to slide into it like Mario descending. I really am
to the caves.
Yes.
You're on the second level.
And here's this poor stranger thinking, God. Oh, they just wanted a cute, normal picture. No, we wanted to recreate Mario shot for shot.
See, and in those moments, I do think the person should be next to the background because it's an action shot at that rate.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. There's no room for
so
whatever's
clear.
Happening in the background.
I think what this tells me is that really I got super lucky that I happened to be having this conversation with you to validate me. And I really hope that if there are any listeners who find this a hot take or an important take, that you should feel free to write in and contradict me. But I don't know. I think we've come to a consensus here. seems like you're crazy if you be doing that thing where you're putting the people next to the background.
I also just want to quickly say, I know we're approaching the end of this lightning rapid fire question, but if you are asked to take the photos of the group, I think if you do a good job, you're allowed to flip the camera around and throw a little selfie in there. Just so that
100%.
Just so that they remember, hey, that nice stranger, this is what they look like. So
I know who to thank.
I know who to thank whenever I look at this photo. So listeners, just throw a selfie in there, see what happens. Let us know what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you deserve it. So, just try it. See what happens. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by all the yellow products at Trader Joe's.
We'd like to thank special guest and, of course, our chronic thesaurus user, Cara Lohman, for joining us today. We'd also like to thank our always co-hosts, Joey Kmire and Aaron Powers. Sorry you couldn't be here today, but we had a lot of fun without you. And the laundry list of our other agents of chaos: sound engineer Alex Contel, programming coordinator Les Jacobs, production crew Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mestrich, and as always, sorry, Ellen. Special thanks, Cara.
I want to thank you, Jess, for having me on the pod. I hope I can come back.
Definitely.
I want to thank the entire cast, crew, production of Everything, Everywhere, All at Once for making just such a remarkable film. I want to thank my parents and my brother and everyone I encounter on a daily basis who inspires me.
Wow, those are so good and thoughtful. I want to thank Chiquita Bananas because they're reliable.
I want to thank chickens.
Yeah.
Anyone who is involved in the chicken process. We talked about you a lot, and you deserve many special shout outs.
Or also special concerns because certain treatments of chickens are disturbing, but we'll leave that for another time.
Special thanks to the people who treat them well.
That's true. Special thanks to the 6-minute egg while we're on the subject of chickens. It's just the correct amount of runny, soft-boiled inside and coagulated white. It's just... Now you don't like that I said coagulated. Just chef's kiss to the 6-minute egg.
Shout out to thesauruses and the word coagulated that just casually threw out there. That's another great word.
Also just means come together, smush into a thing. This would be really, there should be like a silly thesaurus that's just like, but what do you really mean? It's just like, and so what I really mean is just, instead of like leverage, you really just mean use. So you should say that. That should exist, right?
Illustrative. You just mean example.
He says it's another word for example.
Another word for example.
We're back again. All right. Go do something crazy. Bye.
I have a siren going by. Hopefully you can't hear it.
I can't hear it.
Perfect.